Phone anxiety. As I've covered in other videos, hidden ADHD causes people to do some really strange things. One of the stranger things is phone anxiety. For a very long time, I didn't know it had anything to do with ADHD. All I knew was that I myself had it. But when I learned about the emotional side of ADHD, I started to ask my clients about it, and just about every single one of them had it as well. Now, it could be that people who have the more outgoing, gregarious form of ADHD don't experience this. They tend to be the ones who either are or used to be on the hyperactive side. But people with hidden ADHD definitely experience phone anxiety. They avoid making or receiving phone calls, but not all phone calls, just calls related to their personal life that could result in someone being annoyed with them or that involve somebody saying no to some request that they asked for. Somehow, the very possibility of one of these things happening sets off such a fear of humiliation and embarrassment that, well, they'll do practically anything to avoid it. But, like many other ADHD glitches, most of this is not fully conscious. So if you asked your typical person with a hidden ADHD, especially a guy, if he or she was afraid of making phone calls, he would probably say no. It took me a long time to figure this out, so I've saved you some time and figured it out for you. Let me tell you about one of my clients. He was a reporter, so he made phone calls, even highly challenging, confrontative phone calls all the time. He had a girlfriend, the love of his life. 2 weeks before the third anniversary of their first date, she asked him if he would make a reservation at one of their favorite special restaurants, a fairly popular, trendy restaurant. So far, so good. But then she asked him if he would make sure to ask for their very special table, a highly romantic table for two. Well, immediately he started to think, it's only 2 weeks away. They might not have that table for two. Then he would have to tell her that they didn't have that table, and that would mean that he would be disappointing her, and that, for him, would be unbearable. But it got even worse than that, because it's not that he imagined that the maitre d' at the other end would say, I'm so sorry, sir, but the table is taken for that hour, but it will be free an hour later. Would you like to reserve it for then? And that would be bad enough. But no, what he actually imagined in his mind was the maitre d' saying, I'm sorry, sir, that table is not available. And that the maitre d' would be thinking, how could you think that you could get that table just 2 weeks in advance? Who do you think you are, the president? This would be so humiliating to him to have him say that he couldn't deal with it. So when he picked up the phone to call the restaurant, he put it down and said to himself, I can't do this right now. I'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and again, he thought about calling the restaurant. This time he thought, they're going to tell me that the table is not available because they gave it away yesterday. So again he said to himself, I can't do this right now. I'll call tomorrow. This went on for a week, with each day becoming more and more and more impossible to call and ask for that table. I saw them again 5 days before their anniversary, and he had to confess to her that he still hadn't made the reservation. Boy, was she mad. She couldn't understand how a guy who made the kinds of tough phone calls he made all day long couldn't make a reservation to celebrate their anniversary. Surely that had to mean that he just didn't think their relationship was that important. To me, that clearly was not the reason. But the problem was, he didn't know what was causing it either. But if you know about ADDers' incredible sensitivity to rejection and humiliation, coupled with their tendency to avoid and procrastinate anything that might trigger it, it begins to make some sense. Phone anxiety is something that people with ADHD, especially men, don't like to admit to, even to themselves. It seems So ridiculous. And let's face it, kind of wimpy. What guy would want to admit to that? But we have to face it, because denying it doesn't make it go away. So what can we do? Let me give you a few suggestions. First, admit to the people who love you that you really, 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 really hate making certain phone calls. That's what I do. It gets me out of some of them. But when you can't get out of an anxiety-provoking phone call, one thing that can help is to make an absolutely rigid commitment to yourself to do it at a certain exact moment. Tell yourself, I am going to make this phone call at precisely 10:15 a.m. and then go do it. Even better, hopefully you have somebody in your life who accepts your quirks, whom you can lean on. You can tell this person that you're nervous. Then, when you need to make that tough call, enlist this person for support. Work it out so that right before you make the call, you call or text this person to tell her or him that you're going to do it. And then you make the call, and then you call or text this person back right afterwards to say that you did. Something else that helps is to fully realize and understand that what you suffer from is an irrational but very real fear of being rejected, scorned, or humiliated. But don't try to tell yourself to just snap out of it. That's not going to work. Instead, play out in your mind what's actually most likely going to happen in the call. If there are any snags that you probably will encounter or might encounter, plan how you're going to respond to them. But if you really play it out in your mind, you'll probably notice that it's nowhere near as bad as what your primitive brain is telling you is going to happen. Good luck with this. I know it isn't easy, even if it looks to other people like it should be. I really hope that you stop beating yourself up about this one. It's just one more quirk about you that makes you so interesting and lovable. And remember, you are so not alone. You may think it's stupid to be scared of making phone calls, but screw that. As Mark Twain said, courage is not the absence of fear, it is acting in spite of it. Be sure to check out my video that covers another big source of anxiety for people with hidden ADHD: unopened voicemail, email, and snail mail.